Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. First question then. DDAT now has 33 schools, each doing amazing work in their own communities. What's been the biggest challenge in making sure that work is being seen and understood beyond the individual school gates?
Well, I think as you've identified, we're a trust of 33 schools, and we really love the variety of schools that we've got. So we're all over Derbyshire. So that means rural areas as well as urban. We've got primary, infant, junior schools, and they've all got their own stories. They've got their own successes and their own challenges. But why are they in a trust? And I think I don't know about you if you're in a trust, but often I get asked questions around, well, what's the purpose of a trust? What does it do? Because for parents and for pupils, of course, their local school is what's really important and the education they receive. So I think one of the challenges is, coordinating that message about what the trust is about, what are we unified behind. And of course, it's providing a great education. But for us as a diocesan trust, our mission is very clear for all our pupils and all our stakeholders, all our employees, to be able to live life in all its fullness. And what that really means is making the best of all the opportunities, but also, being resilient in the face of challenges and developing the skills and experience, for future life. So it's really about making sure that the stories that come out of the schools are not operating in silos, and we coordinate messages across the trust. So we've worked with you around our termly newsletter. So, all the stories go out all the time from the schools. We don't restrict them, but we make sure there's a coordinated communication that can go out to parents and carers. It can go out to all of our staff, because it's important that they hear about the successes in other schools, and also to our trustees and governance, because they're holding us to account. So I think the coordination of the message is a challenge, but that's something we've got some strategies around. And I think also with the purpose of a trust, you're there to add value, you're there to support schools. So there's also that side of accountability. So something we've had your support to work on, and we're doing it for the second time this year, we're just starting to work on it again, is a trust impact report. And we saw that other trusts were doing this. Lincoln Anglican Academy Trust, who we've been doing some work with, had some really good examples of how every year they're producing a document where they're giving evidence about the impact of the trust services on schools, what projects have been completed, what training, what development, what KPIs we're hitting. So that's something else around that transparency and making sure that we're adding value and we're showing we're there for a purpose.
When families, staff, I guess most importantly maybe inspectors, want to learn about school or a trust, the first thing they're going to do presumably is look online. How important is it that positive, accurate stories about your schools are visible online when people are doing that research?
Well, I think the thing is, it's got to be accurate and it's got to be up to date and easily accessible, because it's the first thing that they're going to look at and the first thing that visitors are going to look at. So I suppose when it comes to inspection, it's really important that, there's accurate information. Also under the new framework, you're, setting out your narrative so that it's clear about how you're meeting the particular criteria, and also with developments from the white paper, how you're working towards meeting those goals. I think also, can you just repeat the question again? Sorry, Sarah.
Online, how important is it that schools and trusts are seen online?
I think also another area which is important is when you're recruiting employees. So, having that presence on LinkedIn, for example, the way people find out information about the trust to, decide whether they want to apply for a particular role, they are going to look on social media. So we have had your support with managing our LinkedIn. Of course, we're supplying the information, but having that professional approach and a team with, a wide range of skills that we can utilize is really important. So, the impact of that for us was that initially, I think when I joined, our LinkedIn only had a following of just over 100 followers. We're now over 800. And that really, I mean, meeting people today and having some conversations as I've arrived, they're people that maybe we've connected on LinkedIn. So I think, obviously you want to be attractive to potential applicants. But also, I think there's a whole thing around honesty as well and getting the right match. So it's important that anybody looking to work with you, can see what you've got to offer, because it's important to, to have that support when you come into a role. But also, I think on the other side of the table, it's really important to me to know that people have done some research about us.
Yeah.
So having that information out there on LinkedIn, on the website. What I really like is when somebody rings up and says, "Oh, I'd like to talk to you about a job. Actually, on your website, I saw your 3-year plan. I noticed this. Can I ask you about that?" And I think, it means that you're not necessarily going for the biggest field, but you're going for the quality candidates and the right match, because that's in everybody's interest.
I think it's interesting what you mentioned there about recruitment and numbers. There's supposed to be a slideshow going here that's got some quotes on it, but there's one that I noticed in the Trust Impact Report about pupil numbers. I think it was Sale and Davies was saying that when they started working with us, they had something like 96 pupils on roll, and now they've got 100 and something, which they're attributing to being seen more visibly. So those numbers show that it does work, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with the profile of our trust, you've got some big schools. We've got one secondary school with a sixth form. We've got within Derby City some very large primaries. But as you've outlined there, Sale and Davy is in a rural area. There aren't so many families and children necessarily moving to those areas, so they're having to work really hard to recruit. So it's great for them to be able to share those stories, again, linked to life in all its fullness, because they've had some fantastic stories.
Oh, amazing.
I
They've
think
been on the BBC a
yes,
lot. Yeah,
they've been on BBC a lot, even though they're quite a small school. And it's great giving the head teachers that opportunity to run with it and speak to you direct. So I suppose that's another challenge with 33 schools. Sarah and her team can't constantly receive emails from 33, but it's great giving them that opportunity, if they really want to go for it in their context, to have that direct link.
Yeah.
And we've
very
had
happy
some
with
great coverage, and I think it's really important, those positive stories, but honest stories are out there.
We're hearing a lot about how AI is changing the way people find information online. Are you seeing any shifts in how people research schools?
I don't think it changes the information that you put out there, but I think obviously people are searching in a different way. I know I, have a go with Copilot, and I found it quite interesting that I'm able to draw down really useful information. Like I was looking for a match of schools that hadn't yet had SIAMS inspections to pair up with our secondary school, Derby Cathedral School, because they were having their first one. And I was able to get an awful lot of useful information, but not all of it was actually 100% accurate when I dug into it. And I think that means it's really important that, as a trust, you are putting information out there and you are putting accurate information, because we're not in control, I don't think, of the AI bots. But, it's important that you're sharing information so that you can influence the searches.
Yeah. And the AI does like verified news sources, and it particularly likes the BBC. So I guess when people are doing those searches, it's going to draw from those verified news sites. So Arboretum being on
Yes.
BBC Online this morning, for example, is really useful for those chatbots.
And definitely that with that story, it's around the school have actually, as you'll probably be aware, transport costs have gone through the roof, and taking primary school children to swimming pools is expensive, but actually really important that they can develop that skill, particularly if maybe they haven't got that opportunity at home. So Arboretum have brought the swimming pool into the school. And I think, that's a great story to show how, that school's being really innovative. And it's not down to me, it's down to that head teacher making some decisions around best use of resources and where we can add value. So again, it's living life in all its fullness, and it's contributing to our bigger narrative, really.
Yeah. Finally, 'cause I don't want to take up everyone's time for too long. If another trust leader asked you whether communication and reputation work really makes a difference to schools, what would you say to them?
Absolutely, yes. And I think, in the early days when I've been involved with different agencies in other education environments, a lot of emphasis on recruitment, recruiting pupils, recruiting staff. But I think more and more in recent times, I've appreciated, especially in a big organisation. We've talked about 33 schools and all the different pupils. Of course, there's a lot of change, and there's a lot of change for our employees. So, communication internally is probably something we focus more on recently,
Yeah.
and how I can improve. We have a monthly CEO newsletter, for example, where we're trying to get that reach to every employee within every school. So I think that's really important. I think it's that whole transparency around the impact that we're having. So the Trust Impact Report, for example, for all our stakeholders is a great way to celebrate successes and show we're adding value. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, the crisis management, of course, we'd like to say we never have challenges, but of course there are communication challenges, and be able to support leaders and myself with great expertise around that. We're a big organisation, and to improve that quality of communication is really important. So I think it's absolutely essential.
I think with the crisis comms as well, it's hopefully just reassuring for you and the head teachers who may think, God, this is going to be an enormous story that's going to be on the front page of Derbyshire Live, and very often we can nip it in the bud and it goes away. She says, speaking very maybe too soon, but they normally go away, don't they? We can deal with things quite promptly, and then everyone stops worrying about it.
Yeah, and you build those relationships because it's not going to go smoothly all of the time, and we have to be reflective. And I think if we can demonstrate that through really timely communications as well, people aren't waiting, and it's professional. I think that's really important and appreciated.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Great, thank you.
It's been a pleasure working with DDAT, and we really hope we've been able to shed some light on how communications plays a core role in education.